How to Make People Like You in 90 Seconds or Less by Boothman. When you meet someone, look them in the eye and give them a firm handshake because everyone knows that making a good first impression is important. Former fashion photographer Boothman explains why, and a whole lot more, in this fascinating look at how people make connections. Like most people, you probably establish immediate rapport with certain individuals and don't seem to have anything in common with others. If you've wondered why, the author explains the components of communication and offers specific techniques you can employ to create connections quickly. The fun part is that after you've finished the book, you can try your newly acquired skills on just about anyone in any situation. Though some people are naturals, for most becoming a skilled conversationalist takes a lot of practice. Get Abstract believes that almost everyone will find useful information and practical advice in Boothman's book. At the very least, he gives you plenty to discuss. You only have 90 seconds, and probably a lot less, to impress someone. Connecting with other people is a 3-step process: meeting, establishing rapport, and communicating. To make a positive connection, don't be negative. You can't be friends with everyone you meet, and that's as it should be. About 55% of all communication is made up of nonverbal cues. People interpret the world through visual, auditory, and kinesthetic stimuli. Individuals usually have one dominant sensory category. Crossing your arms in front of your chest during a conversation conveys a negative, self-protective message. Good conversationalists have excellent listening skills. Questions that elicit only yes and no answers are conversation killers. Once you know what to look for, verbal and IQs are very obvious. Summary. Getting to know you. Unless you live alone on a remote island, your daily interaction with people defines your existence. You depend on other human beings, from your parents, to the postal worker and the kid who delivers your morning paper. People seek out physical, social, and emotional connections through their families and communities. Babies cannot thrive if they aren't held. Adults who live in isolation are more likely to have medical problems. No matter what you do or where you live, your attitude determines the quality of your relationships, not to mention just about everything else in your life. Establishing a connection is easy when you meet pleasant people who are responsive, gracious, warm, and interesting. Such qualities, the traits that make people immediately likable and approachable, are clear within the first 90 seconds you are together. That's all the time you really have to form a bond. If you understand the dynamics of connecting, you can apply the formula to any situation. Making connections is what our gray matter does best. The 3 essential components of connecting are: meeting. A strong first impression is essential. Your body language should convey openness. Turn your heart toward people and don't cross your arms. Establish eye contact, smile and introduce yourself. Extend your arm and offer a firm handshake. Don't underestimate the importance of doing this well. A handshake that is too strong or too weak can sabotage the connection on the spot. Even without shaking hands, you can emit positive energy. Establishing rapport. Rapport occurs when two people are on the same wavelength, feel comfortable with each other, and share a sense of humor or empathy. Their conversation becomes an effortless, easy, friendly banter with a high likability factor. Communicating. Are you successfully transmitting and receiving the information you want? Is feedback helping you, or is it merely a source of frustration? Your ability to restate or reframe messages will determine whether you get the results you seek. The magic ingredient. Most people know rapport when they experience it, though defining it may be difficult. Rapport is the unexplainable familiarity you feel after chatting with a stranger for only a few minutes. It is also the foundation of long-term relationships built on mutual interests and trust. Rapport often occurs during random encounters, but you can orchestrate it. All relationships are built on trust. Trust is built on congruence. Some techniques that can help facilitate rapport include: attitude. When you send out negative vibes, expect the same in return. A waiter will be more receptive to your requests if you are courteous and soft-spoken rather than loud and demanding. Being belligerent probably won't get you out of paying a speeding ticket, but being courteous might. Attitude determines whether people cooperate with you or resist. A positive attitude sets the stage for a positive result. Body language, facial expressions and posture have an immediate impact. If you cross your arms in front of your chest, even if you're freezing, you are making an unfriendly, closed gesture. Always face people and open your heart. Unbutton your jacket, smile and make eye contact. Show interest, even if you are merely practicing your technique. Alignment. A famous study done 40 years ago found that 55% of communication is based on visual perception. Moreover, the visual and auditory cues you send must be congruous or you'll short-circuit communication. For example, If you tell an employee that he has plenty of time to finish collating papers for a meeting while looming over his desk with your arms tightly crossed and your jaw clenched, you are giving him a mixed message. He will take his cue from your body language, not your words. Naturalness, to make a positive impression, keep your cool even when your insides are doing somersaults. Meeting new people is nerve-wracking, particularly if you have a lot riding on a potential relationship. Jitters can make you talk, smile or joke too much. Accept the fact that you are excited, control your breathing and allow your natural qualities to shine. Get in sync. People with shared interests enjoy one another's company. You can base friendships on rooting for the same sports teams, dining together at gourmet restaurants or watching foreign films. People are automatically drawn to one another for hundreds of reasons. You may like someone because he or she has an optimistic outlook on life or speaks candidly. You can tell just by observing people which duos are in sync. Some couples even walk alike and use identical hand gestures. Likability has something to do with how you look, but a lot more to do with how you make people feel. You can't count on connecting immediately with a stranger when you only have 90 seconds to create a good rapport, but you can establish commonality quickly if you learn the art of synchronizing, subtly mirroring the other person's gestures, tone of voice and body language. Although this sounds artificial and manipulative, the process actually occurs quite naturally. With a man who is demonstrative and waves his arms, do the same, but be careful not to give the impression that you are blatantly copying him. If you talk to a woman who stands with her weight shifted to one leg or with her hands on her hips, do so too. People won't pick up on your actions, but they will start to feel a connection with you. The prize, when you achieve rapport, is the other person's positive acceptance. Try also to match other people's speech patterns, inflections and modulations. People who speak softly and deliberately will be more comfortable in low-key conversations. Keep this in mind especially if you have an exuberant personality, and might overpower and intimidate others. Practice synchronization in your daily interactions and it will soon become part of your life. Talking a good game. Sharp reporters understand the importance of asking solid questions. Interviewing people is a lot like engaging in productive conversations. If you are not genuinely interested in someone, you probably will not establish a strong rapport. Good conversationalists want to hear what the other person has to say. Bad conversationalists are merely interested in hearing themselves talk. Synchronizing is a way to make the other person become open, relaxed and happy to be with you. Unless you're looking for specific information, is the chicken parmigiana here any good? Avoid asking questions that elicit only yes and no replies. Why or what questions spark and sustain conversations much more effectively? Of course, you have to determine if the individual sitting next to you on the train, for example, is interested in conversing in the first place. If the person meets your innocuous opening line, "Hi, my name is Steve," with silence and closed body language, you may be out of luck. But if the person smiles and also introduces him or herself, you have taken the first step toward a pleasant exchange. Active listening is an active attempt to grasp and understand the facts and the underlying feelings of what is being said. Conversation involves much more than words. Nonverbal cues are significant. Talking to someone while your eyes dart around the room indicates that you are not really interested in the dialogue. Conversation requires paying attention to what someone is saying and facilitating a healthy give and take exchange. Allow other people to finish their thoughts. If you pontificate or dominate the conversation, they'll find you extraordinarily boring. Be upbeat and energetic. No one wants to hear complaints or criticisms. A matter of perspective. Your interpretation of the world depends upon how your brain processes information through your senses. According to Richard Bandler and John Grinder, founders of neurolinguistic programming, human beings fall into 3 of the 5 sensory categories: visual, auditory and kinesthetic. Although compartmentalizing people generally doesn't work, most individuals have a sensory preference. This helps explain why 3 people who see the same movie can have 3 distinct impressions. A visual person might notice the film's unique special effects. An auditory person might be aware of hearing thunder in the movie's soundtrack. The kinesthetic person might have felt a sense of tension in the audience. There's nothing quite so disconcerting as talking to someone who is looking elsewhere. If this happens to you, excuse yourself as fast as possible. Approximately 55% of people are predominantly visual, 15% are auditory and 30% are kinesthetic. If you understand these 3 sensory categories, and practice identifying their characteristics and recognizing people's subtle cues, you can make connections faster and more effectively. Visuals, appearance means a lot to visual people. They tend to dress well, be carefully groomed and prefer attractive surroundings. Visual people know where they are headed and, therefore, are typically decisive. They may speak rapidly and often like to be in control. Auditories, These individuals love language and enthusiastically engage in conversations they find interesting. Auditory people have pleasant, persuasive voices, and are most comfortable working in professions that make use of words and sounds. Kinesthetics. Kinesthetic people speak deliberately, focus on feelings, and may make their points in a roundabout way. They are less demonstrative than visual or auditory people, and often enjoy working with their hands. Tune into cues. If you take the time to look and listen carefully, you can learn to discern differences in the three sensory categories. Visual people use sight-related phrases, such as, "That's a brilliant idea," "This is my vision for the future," or "He's a very colorful performer." Auditory types refer to sound and might say, "That suit you're wearing is really loud," "The silence in this room is deafening," or "All that child does is whine." Kinesthetic folks put things in physical terms, saying, "I'm feeling very unsettled," "Your comments really stung," or "My boss really threw me for a loop." The fact is that we like people who are like us. Listen carefully to how people express themselves and try to pick out the visual language. The next day, focus solely on isolating auditory words. Then devote a day to recognizing kinesthetic words and phrases. As you become more proficient at this, you'll strengthen your ability to build rapport. People who connect live longer, people who connect get cooperation, and people who connect feel safe and strong. According to Bandler and Grinder, eye movements also indicate how people retrieve information. In fact, processing thoughts without moving your eyes is virtually impossible. When people are asked to remember something, they tend to look to the left. When they look to the right, they are trying to construct and relive an experience. Do not confuse these movements with how you move your eyes when you survey a room. Expect the best. People who seem to establish rapport effortlessly are fortunate natural communicators who don't give the process a second thought. They instinctively understand the importance of making eye contact, not dominating the conversation and absorbing what the other person is trying to say. They know that attitude is everything. You can't expect a positive outcome if you have a negative approach. People who know what they want tend to get it because they are focused and positive, and this is reflected outward and inward in their attitude. Maybe you once had a self-defeated point of view and didn't believe that you were capable of getting along with people, particularly strangers, even those who you really wanted to get to know better. To cure that faulty thinking, rewire your brain by being conscious of your approach. Don't let your imagination run wild. Assume that your encounters are going to be positive. Rejection is an important part of anyone's educational journey through life. It may be inevitable, but it doesn't have to be devastating. You won't hit it off with everyone, but that's perfectly all right. Successful communicators don't go out into the world every day loaded up with skills and techniques, they go out and take what they do for granted. Remember, human beings want to connect. They function best in communities, drawing strength and comfort from one another. When you're ready to apply the lessons you've learned about synchronization, rapport, and sensory perception, you'll see that making people like you isn't difficult at all.